Today I have the opportunity to take a look around one of the coolest generations of BMW M5, the E39. Now this car has a naturally aspirated V8 and a manual transmission. We're going to take a look around the entire car, what makes it so cool, and then we'll take it for a drive. The E39 M5 is really a sleeper because it's very similar styling-wise to the base 540, but the engine and the driving characteristics are nothing like the base level. The E39 M5 is loved by car enthusiasts for a couple different reasons. This is actually the last generation of BMW M5 that they ever had a manual transmission available for users. And beyond that, this is the last generation of M5 with a naturally aspirated V8. This is a car that holds its value really well and is really loved by a lot of the car community. The cool things styling-wise about this car are its deep dish wheels, which are unique to the M5 and I always thought made it look super cool. And it also has a lip on the rear trunk, which just gives it a touch more aggression compared to the base level. This specific car is finished in a really beautiful dark blue. It looks black like it's cloudy today, but in the sun, it really shines. Starting at the front of the car, it does share a lot of characteristics with the 540, but I don't think that's a bad thing at all. The 540 is such a classic looking BMW, and the M5 takes it a little bit upwards, but still retains a lot of those classic looks. Of course, you have the iconic front grille, which is carried through even to today's BMWs, and it has a couple design elements which still carry on to the cars today. Even though it's over 20 years old, you still have pretty cool ring looking lights, especially when the car is driving, that carry over to the newer generations of M5. And I think the styling in the front, although an older style, looks really classic. Now, coming to the side, you're immediately greeted with one of the coolest things, in my opinion, of the M5. They had these unique wheels for the E39 that I think are such a cool design. I love the multi-spoke and the silver. It really goes well against the dark blue. As we continue down the side, there's not a lot of hints that tell you that this is an M5, but you get small little badges right here that just give you the idea that this is something special. As we continue down the car, you get to, again, one of the cool aspects is the rear wheels are actually larger than the front and are much more deep dish. You can actually see right here that they go inward quite a bit and they look super wide and just really good. They make this car different than the base model and it sets it apart really nicely. Heading to the back of the M5, I think, is really where you get a lot of the differentiation, and it looks like a much sportier car compared to the base 540. Just this rear 3/4 shot I think looks so good with the wide wheels, the dual exhaust, and the M5 badge. While there's not too much that's changed from the 540, you have a couple things that are very important. First is the exhaust. I think the dual exhaust looks really good and is carried over to the models today. This kind of tells you it's an M car and something special. And not only do you get the M5 badge, which I think of course sets it apart, but you get this small little lip on the car, which does look a little bit better than having no lip at all. Makes it stand out and differentiates the car. The E39 styling is pretty subtle compared to the newer generations, but I don't think that's a bad thing at all. They had a few little hints that, made this stick out, and it hasn't really aged badly at all over the last 20 years. It's still a sleeper. The car enthusiasts love it, and I think because of its more subtle styling, it's actually aged a lot better than some of the cars that were trying to look modern and ahead of their time. Stepping in to the M5 is a little interesting. The door actually feels really heavy, which I think is something I wasn't expecting, but that speaks to the quality of the car. BMW during this generation were building quality cars, and it's felt in every single way. There are a few things that I think are just a little bit strange in this interior. First off is the vent right here. I've always thought it was a really interesting thing to have an actual vent on the door panel rather than in here. You can see that the air just passes through and then is vented out the door panel. Just something a little unique and strange that we don't see on a lot of new cars. When you step into the E39 M5, you know it's an M5, largely because of the badging. Right in this simple frame, I think there's 4 different places that you can see the M5 badge already. One of the most important aspects about this car is the manual transmission. You want an awesome sounding V8 and a manual transmission in your M5 sedan, this has got to be the generation for you. Overall, the interior of this car is pretty good. I will say it looks pretty dated compared to modern stuff, but that's sort of what you expect for a 20-year-old car. Some of the aspects that I think are really cool are the dials. In here, you have a lot of things that you're still used to all the way up to the F80 generation. For example, the dials here look, more or less pretty similar to my F83 M4. I love that you still have the lights that indicate the red line, even in a 20-year-old car. I think that's a really cool thing to see. The steering wheel is pretty chunky, but you still have everything you need. You have, of course, your volume up and down buttons, and a few other buttons on the steering wheel, but overall it's not too complicated. You have the steering wheel, you have your transmission, and that's really all you need. It does, of course, have the sort of weird turn signals that BMWs have, which make it a little bit difficult to turn it on and off, hence all the BMW driver jokes. And looking further down into the interior, this particular car has an upgraded double DIN touchscreen, which I think kind of modernized the interior as well. The stock head unit looks really, really old. The AC and the VAC controls, again, look kind of dated, but not too bad for a 20-year-old car. I think they've done a pretty good job. All of this, of course, is physical buttons, given the age, and it's sort of simplistic. Sitting in these seats, they're really comfortable. I would not be opposed to taking this on a long road trip. They do have pretty good side bolsters, but yeah, it's just a comfortable place to sit in. Something that's a little strange about the M5, you would think there's a ton of storage since it's a pretty big car, but that's really not the case around this area. Right here, you would expect this to fold up, but it really doesn't. All you can do with this is just put it forward or backward, and that's kind of followed up by just 2 really, really small compartments right here for coins, and of course an ashtray, sign of the times. And another really weird thing is the cup holders. You don't have cup holders here or here at all. There's just these 2 little slots which pull out, but I definitely would not leave a drink right here. I think if you're shifting through the gears any sort of aggressively, the drink is just going to spill right away. So it's kind of odd not to have cup holders in a car like this. A unique feature too, sort of ahead of its time, was the sport mode. I believe this changed the steering feel and not too much else, but to have a sport mode in a 20-plus-year-old car is pretty cool. Another interesting thing, for a 20-year-old car, I did not expect it to have automatic lights. That's something, of course, that we're used to now. But yeah, for 20 years old, I think that's pretty cool. The back seats followed the same theme of the front. It's a super comfortable place to be. There's nice back seats, which I think your passengers will not be mad to be in at all. You have nice M5 badging right here. And of course, because this is a luxury sedan that's 20 years old, you have these nice sort of screens. I'm not sure how many people actually use them, but you can put them up all around and just make it a little bit darker in the back. Now, where you don't have a lot of storage in the front passenger compartment, that totally changes when you open the trunk. If you can see, there's a ton of storage in here. So I think that's sort of the redeeming quality, at least from a storage perspective. You have a ton of storage if you need to put stuff in the trunk. Should have no problems at all. Like I mentioned, the owner has actually spent over $40,000 on maintenance. This car has 173,000 miles on it. And while they're amazing cars, and they definitely are so fun to drive, they're pretty expensive to maintain. This particular car has obviously had everything already gone through it, but the Vanos pumps typically fail, and there's a lot of parts that can really add up on these E39 M5s. It's funny, there's a sticker for 24-hour toll-free assistance. I wonder if this still works 20 years later. I'm kind of interested to call and see. Being an older BMW, you have this little hidden hood release. And as we lift it up, you can see a awesome part of this car. One of the coolest aspects about the E39 M5 is its naturally aspirated V8. We're kind of losing this in a ton of cars, and to have a sedan with a V8 and a manual transmission, I think is just so incredible. The owner of this car has an upgraded cold air intake. I believe it's Dynon, which looks really cool with the carbon fiber. There's actually even carbon fiber on the top of the engine right here. But this is definitely one of the things that makes this car just so special, and I can't wait to hear how it sounds. Now I think it's time to start it up, hear how it sounds, and take it for a drive. First drive of the E39 M5. Right off the bat, the clutch pedal is in a little bit of a strange position. It has, the bar that comes down kind of really closely above it. So when you do hit the clutch pedal to move forward, your foot sort of hits the top of that bar. The V8 sounds so good. Right away, you can just hear that V8 rumble. It really sounds amazing. I'm at 2,000 RPM and this thing just sounds so good. Even at super low revs, just warming up the car, I mean, you really hear that rumble. It sounds amazing. And it also has very, very low end torque. I'm honestly a little bit surprised. You really don't need to be going very fast. You can feel the torque right away. Oh, that V8 sounds so good. The brakes are a little bit spongy. I'm not sure if that's because I haven't really gotten on them at all quite yet, but it sort of reminds me of my old Audi S4. I think a lot of sports cars, the area that they need to make it a more dailyable way to drive is really in the brakes. You don't want to have super, super sensitive hard brakes a lot of the times. So that's an area that, a lot of times sports cars just don't do very well. These do feel a little bit spongy. Yeah, there's a lot of brake travel before you actually get into the brakes. Let's open it up a little bit. Even just slightly opening it up, 2,000 RPM, this thing just sounds so good. You also have that sort of old traditional BMW steering, which a lot of people really, really love. This car, yeah, it's definitely a heavier steering. Sounds like that. That's ridiculous. Wow. The suspension definitely, kind of has seen better days. I think with a lot of older cars, one of the aspects that you can't really hide is the older suspension. Just going over some bumps here, it feels like an older car. You feel a lot of the shakes, a lot of the bumps. You hear a couple little rattles here and there, and that's kind of within the nature of an older car. The gearbox feels pretty good. It does feel a little vague. There's definitely some slop within the gearbox, so I think, if you're driving this car every single day and you're just driving it around town, it feels more catered to a daily driver. I wouldn't say the gearbox is really notchy and super, exactly where you want it. It definitely feels a little bit sloppy. Yeah, the low-end torque, I think, is one of the things that I'm most surprised about. The torque coupled with just a really nice sound of that V8. Let's see if we can get over here, and we will try to find a small section just to stretch the legs a little bit. Not going to go too crazy, of course. So appreciate the owner letting me take his car out and see how it sounds and the feel of of it. So we're not going to go too crazy, not going to be hitting the red line. But one cool thing is the actual lights that illuminate as the car is warming up. So it sort of limits the red line to just around 4,000 RPM. As you get the car warmer and warmer, you do see that red line of 7,000 RPM. 7,000 RPM in a V8 car is pretty high, especially as a manual transmission V8 car. That just makes it really, I think, be a ton of fun for the road. This probably isn't going to be a car that you're taking to the track. I mean, let's be real. It's pretty heavy. It's older, and I think the repairs are going to be pretty expensive. If you want a track car, you'll probably just take something smaller like an S2000, like a Lotus Elise. But to have a car like this, a sedan that you can hop in with all of your friends and has that sound, is definitely really cool. I'm sure this would be great in the canyons, and it's no surprise that these cars have sort of held their value like they have. These cars haven't lost a ton of value in the last sort of 10 years. And I think that's, all to do with these awesome characteristics that we're really missing. All right, second gear, let's stretch the legs a little bit. Let's see what it's about. I was really not expecting that. For an older car, you sometimes forget how fast they still are, but this V8 is definitely still alive and very well. Wow. I think I really only pushed it to around like 4,500 RPM, but it moves. This car is no slouch. With the outdated interior and the sort of subtle looks, yeah, you do just forget how capable this car really is. But I think that's part of the charm. You have this sort of sleeper. This is probably one of the ultimate sleepers that you can just get in. It's super low key. You can kind of go around town and it's not too loud, but then when you want, you open it up and boy, does this thing move. Sitting at a light here, let's talk about the value of these cars. This is something that I think there are a lot of them in the sort of $20,000 price range, and I think that's a really good price point for a car like this. This is one of my favorite combinations of cars. You have an awesome engine, a really good transmission, and it's around 20 years old, which means it's sort of already hit its depreciation. I think if you get into a car like this, just like this one that's had all the maintenance done, it's sort of a turnkey car that you're not going to lose a ton of money on. Yes, you're going to have to maintain it, and that definitely will come with a lot of bills. Like the owner of this car has put in over $40,000, but besides the maintenance, the actual car itself probably isn't going to depreciate a whole lot. So with that being said, I think this is an awesome option for someone that wants to get into a sports car, wants to get into a bit of a special car, but not lose their butt on depreciation. See how this car does. One more little push. This car is super fun. I mean, what other four-door sedan can you get that's going to offer you that level of sound and excitement? Of course there are, a lot of things that you wish were a little bit better. You wish the suspension was a little bit better, the brake feel is a little bit better, the interior is, a little bit more modern, but in reality, for a car that's $25,000 and sounds like that, I don't think you can ask for any more. All right, one more little push. I'm so impressed by this car. It really is sort of like a wolf in sheep's skin. I think it's super underrated, and I just love the feeling of this. Wow. So I think now that we're stopped at the light, this is a great time to kind of close things up. I want to thank my friend John so much for letting me review his car. He mentioned to me that he's really interested in seeing this car. 10 years later, he can come back to this video, and I think that's a really cool thing. This has really opened my eyes to the E39 M5. It's something that I really hadn't given too much thought, but I kind of get it now. I kind of get why the car community likes these so much, and it's for really good reason. So again, thank you so much, John, for letting me review your car. This is a day I definitely won't forget.